So you're already probably thinking, why is this a mirror building video and there's already a mirror completed that looks old? And that's because that was the mirror that came with this house. So a couple years ago, I remodeled my bathroom. I never got around to building a mirror, and I didn't want to buy one because I'm a woodworker. I can build these things myself. 2 or 3 years later, I'm building it. So the first part of this whole project is I just wanted to pick up my own lumber. I didn't need to go buy any lumber because I have a pretty good amount on my shelf, and it actually matches the flooring perfectly. So the first step of this was to go ahead and break down all the material into smaller pieces. The mirror actually measured 16 by 20, so I just cut the rails and stiles 4 inches bigger on each side. And I do that because I want to be able to have enough material left over if I did miscalculate my measurements, and it's just easier to maneuver and you take out less waste when you do your milling. And I was able to actually keep these boards at 1 1/8 inches thick, which is pretty thick for some rails and stiles on a mirror. And now I needed to set up my 1-bladed dado stack. I do have a dado stack, but I don't like to switch back and forth, so you can get the same results without having a dado stack, which I'm really doing here. All you need to do is run your blade through the center of the board, flip it over until you get your desired width by moving the fence back and forth. And I wanted it to be pretty tight fitting against the mirror, but I also wanted to allow for expansion and contraction of the wood. And here how I got out of math is I put my rails against the mirror, and then I measured in between, which would give me my stile length. And I added a 1/16 of an inch to allow for that wood movement. And I also clamped my stiles and rails together just to ensure that each piece comes out exactly the right length. You could do the same concept if you did have a stop block, but I don't have a big enough miter stand for that. Now you can see here that I'm putting my pieces together, and then I can actually move that mirror back and forth, and that's gonna allow for that wood movement. It takes a lot of pressure, so it's not gonna ever move around, and it's not like this mirror is ever gonna be lifted off the wall, so it doesn't matter if I don't add Spaceballs into this joint. And I'm also marking my rails to be 1/16 of an inch long. And after I cut my rails to length, I am able to go ahead and get my first feel of how it's gonna look put together around the mirror. So now you're probably thinking, there's exposed dados on the ends. We should just save that for later. Keep watching. I'm gonna fix that. And I actually meant to do this on purpose. And now I labeled all my pieces to ensure that I had a good glue up and I didn't get any pieces mixed up together. It's just easier just to take your time right now, make sure it's all labeled right. And then also I wanted to make sure that it was square before I did start the joinery process. And I also wanted to clamp it up just to ensure that all my joints did come out tight. And of course, had to check it again for square because I'd rather be square now than unsquare later and then have problems all the way down the line of gluing this thing up. And what do you think I'm going to use for the joinery method on this? Of course, I'm going to use my Festool Domino. I like to use the Festool Domino on this because for one, I have it, and for two, it's quick and easy. And you can use any other joinery process on this. You could use even pocket hole screws, or you can just use dowels. It all comes out the same way. It's just a mirror. It's not like it's going to be moved. And I'm going to be using 8mm dominoes. So after I did my bit change, I was able to start the mortises. I started with the rails first, and then I finished with the stiles. And I'm also glad that I took the time right now to pre-finish the stiles and the rails. I just did the sides where it's going to be bumped up to each other to the mirror. I wanted to ensure that because I wanted the mirror to be protected on the inside and also on the outside. So I was able to mark the pieces and put blue tape on there to keep the polyurethane off of the edges that's going to be connected with glue. And I should also mention that I am just using General Finishes Wipe On Poly. It's just a water-based polyurethane. You can really wipe the stuff. It takes a lot more coats, but it gets the job done. And then I can peel my tape off and all the edges are protected and I don't have to worry about trying to polyurethane around the mirror. And that would just be a mess. So now I can go ahead and start my glue up. I had a really good dry assembly. I thought I was gonna have the exact way with my actual glue up, but of course it went the exact opposite way. And I started with one rail and my 2 side stiles. I also cleaned the glass very well on the edges. I wanted to do this so that if there was any kind of expansion and contraction, you wouldn't see the fingerprints underneath. And the mirror in the back panel slid into the groove pretty easily. I was pretty happy with the way it fit in there. And I might have spoke too soon. As soon as I added my top rail, it didn't seem like it wanted to come together very well, and I was kind of scared to bang around on the edges because nobody wants to break a mirror. And I had to end up banging on it, moving my clamps back and forth, but I was able to finally get it nice and tight. And after ensuring it was nice and square for the 12th time, I was able to lay a straight edge over the top to make sure that these parallel clamps didn't push this thing out of whack, because they do that every once in a while. And then, while I was waiting for the glue to dry, I had my daughter come out, which is also my assistant manager, clean up my shop. She does a pretty good job in here, so I guess I'll keep her. Maybe I'll give her a raise one day. And like I said, if you stuck around, I was going to show you how I fixed these dados. I use this piece of whinge. I really don't use whinge that often because it is so expensive, but since this red oak is lighter and the whinge is super dark, it was a good contrasting color. And getting close to my line with my bandsaw, I was able to finish it up with a block plane and a sander. I had to go back and forth until I got the fit perfect, but once I did get it perfect, it was good. And I couldn't also cut these pieces on the miter saw or the bandsaw because it seems like they want to spit the pieces everywhere or they want to break them. It's just easier to cut them by hand. And I trimmed everything down on the edges, including the stiles and rails and also the little stop dado inserts or inlays. I trimmed it down with my track saw. And it works really good, and that's why I really do love the track saw. So it was time to add a chamfer on the top, and I also have a video on how I built this router bit stand in my videos. All you need to do is just search through. It's probably the second or third video on my channel. And after adding the chamfer to the top, I was able to flip it over and add my keyhole. Now this keyhole jig that I have is super bad. I need to build a new one. It's put together right now with hot glue, CA glue, screws, anything you can think of, it has in it. And after spending a lot of time giving it a good thorough 80 all the way to 150 to 220, I was able to break the edges on the front of the mirror. I had to be really careful on this step. I would hate to get all the way here and then scratch the mirror and then have to break the mirror and then have 7 years of bad luck and also a scratched mirror. But I didn't do that. I did something worse. I painted the walls a wrong color, as you can see. So, I've already been on this bathroom remodel for 2 to 3 years, slacking on this mirror. And then I go to touch up the walls for a brand new mirror, and I don't have any of the right color. And they don't make that color anymore. So, we're gonna call this the 7-year bathroom remodel.